We are live on Facebook now.
Should I start? I'm sorry.
Yeah, we are live now. You can start when you're ready.
Okay. Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Jeff Eckert. I'm a staff attorney at Bay Area Legal Services, and I am part of the Bay Pines VA Medical Legal Partnership that Bay Area Legal Service participates in with the Bay Pines VA Healthcare System and also with Stetson University College of Law Veterans Clinic. I work along with my colleague Pi Young, and we serve veterans in Pinellas County, Sarasota, Manatee primarily, as well as Pasco and Hillsborough. We serve veterans who need civil legal aid or assistance, and we work closely with the Bay Pines VA healthcare providers. In this Legal Answers Live session, we're going to talk about some of the common legal issues that veterans face and deal with, and also some of the veteran benefits that are available that can help to alleviate some of these issues that veterans may face. So to begin with, just very briefly, as I said, this Facebook Live is aimed to help veterans learn more about the common legal issues veterans face, and also how the Veterans Administration can help meet their needs. Now, to be clear, we do not work, or I do not work for the VA, but we're part of the medical legal partnership with Bay Pines VA system. Some of the topics we will cover include VA advanced directives, overpayments, survivor benefits, disability, pension, and housing programs. So just to briefly address some of the unique legal needs that veterans face are different from that of the general population based on their military service, based on their training, and based on some of the events and experiences that they encounter during their service. There was a 2017 study that found that veterans who receive legal services from medical legal partnerships at the VA medical centers, and that's important that they were embedded into the VA, showed significant outcomes in mental health, as well as improvements in housing and income. And that is a big goal of our MLP. The percentage of veterans who have at least one disability is double that of non-veterans. The LSC, which stands for the Legal Services Corporation, works closely to fund and support MLPs and other services for veterans with their civil legal issues. And just briefly, a Department of Veteran Affairs survey of homeless veteran identified some of the top unmet legal needs, which included assistance with child support issues, driver's license restoration, outstanding warrants and fines, evictions and foreclosures. And that aligns with and is consistent with many of the legal needs that we encounter in our work with veterans. Senior veterans are especially vulnerable. Senior veterans and their survivors at times struggle to obtain compensation, pension, related benefits that are critical to their financial stability. And that is a big focus of our presentation this morning. Veterans tend to be older than the general population, with a median age of 64 years old and average age of 54. Elderly veterans are particularly vulnerable to health and economic threats that have occurred during the COVID-19 pandemic. That includes homelessness, lack of health care, delays in receiving financial support. And these are all legal problems and issues we encountered in the last year and a half during the pandemic. Another issue that put veterans at the forefront is age and respiratory illnesses, which unfortunately and tragically made them more susceptible to COVID-19 as well. So to begin with, I'm going to go over some of the different VA benefits that veterans and their advocates and households, families may or may not be aware of. And I want to just kind of preface this by saying one of the most important contacts at the VA is your VA social worker. And if you don't know who your VA social worker is as a veteran, you can ask your primary care provider, your doctor at the VA, and they will provide that contact information. And that person is often a very valuable resource in accessing these benefits that I'm going to go over. And we also work very closely with the VA social workers. So the VA Advanced Directive is a document that focuses on your preferences for healthcare, so that if you become incapacitated, if you become unable to make decisions on your own, or even just want someone else to help you with your decisions, or to be able to get access to certain records or communications with your medical providers, there are documents that the VA has specifically created that can help with that. The Advanced Directive is the best way to ensure that your medical and mental health care decisions reflect your wishes, especially if you're not able to make decisions for yourself. For example, if you're in a car accident and are unconscious, or in a coma, or in some other state where you need somebody to make decisions, this document helps your providers to know ahead of time what those decisions would be, and to help guide their treatment for you. It also gives a lot of peace of mind to your loved ones, that they can know that they can either assist with the decision-making process, and they can look to the document to know what your wishes were in the event of this type of need. An advanced directive does not affect any benefits adversely, and it can be revoked or changed at any time. And then just very briefly, what to do once it's completed. You want to keep it in a safe place for storage. We recommend that you provide copies to healthcare providers, agents, family members, and that you let them know where your original copy is also. And then, because the VA has a form for everything, we wanted to make sure that everyone is aware. It's called the Advanced Directive, Durable Power of Attorney for Healthcare and Living Will, VA Form 10-1037. Also, just to be clear, this Advanced Directive is not a will, and does not replace a will, and does not provide for any decision-making outside of healthcare. For example, for financial decisions and other things, there are different documents that would need to be executed for that. And unfortunately, just a last mention is during the COVID pandemic, I'm going to reference this quite a bit. This is a need that came to the forefront for veterans, especially ones who are in nursing homes or in some type of VA facility, and family members who are at times unable to contact them or to visit. Having these documents in place was very helpful, both to the families, to the veterans, and to their medical providers. Next, I'm going to talk about VA overpayments and debt management. And this is I would say, a very frequent issue that we encounter at the Pines VA MLP and reported from other MLPs, because debt is a major source of stress, anxiety, and has direct effects on healthcare outcomes. A VA overpayment is when a veteran receives more VA benefits than they are entitled to, and then the government, the Department of Veteran Affairs, basically says that money needs to be repaid. This can happen for a number of reasons. Sometimes it is not the veteran's fault, or there is what's called shared fault. Perhaps the VA delayed in notifying the veteran of an overpayment, or there were other circumstances that arose, which are things that we help to investigate. But once the VA does discover that, they're required to send a notice before they can take any action. as far as garnishing your VA benefits or making deductions. So some of the common reasons we see overpayments if you don't report a life change. So life changes can be marriages, divorce. It can be having children. It can be your children 18 and no longer dependents, because sometimes benefits are based on the number of children in your household. A big one we see is because of death of a spouse or the veteran, that once they pass, those benefits are changed. Or if a veteran accesses new or different sources of income, such as Social Security, such as employment, even part-time, those changes are required to be reported to the VA, because they will adjust a veteran's benefit amounts, whether it's VA pension, disability, or other benefits, including healthcare copays. And if you don't report those timely, then it can cause overpayments that they come back to and seek to recoup. So we try to avoid that as much as possible when we advise veterans. But once you receive that notice, you do have options, and you can question the debt, meaning did they calculate the debt correctly? If they're saying you owe $5,000, is that correct? And you can ask them to give an explanation in what's called plain language or understandable language. You can request a hearing. And if you do that within 30 days of receiving the notice, the VA will not make any changes to your current benefits as far as making any deductions. The one that we commonly assist veterans is with a waiver request, where you basically state that in the interest of fairness and equity, that this debt should be waived, and then what the reasons are. And as I kind of alluded to before, it could be because some of the fault was the VA, or the veteran was not aware of their reporting duties, or certain other circumstances that may arise. Then they will consider that waiver request, and they will issue a decision to either waive the debt in part or in full or not at all. Then there are options at that point. And something we commonly assist veterans, if they're denied, is in reviewing the denials, reviewing their appeal rights, and advising them accordingly. I'm so sorry. Let me go back real quick and just, then the other are to request a payment plan. And if a veteran is on a very limited fixed income, which many of the veterans we work with are, they will consider a hardship payment plan, which could be as little as $50 a month to repay a debt. And they'll consider other options also. And then there's an offer to compromise. That is something we typically do not advise veterans to do, because if you do that and they accept your offer, for example, if you owe $5,000 and you offer to pay $3,000 and they accept that offer to settle the debt, you are required to pay that $3,000 with a certain amount of time. And if you do not have the capability of doing that, then other adverse actions can happen. So, and also just as a kind of practice tip, if you make an offer to compromise before you make a waiver request, they will make a decision on the offer to compromise first, which could affect your ability to get some or all of the debt waived. A request for a waiver, just very briefly, is just a statement to the VA asking them to waive it and explaining to them the reasons why it is not according to the law and according to certain factors that they'll consider. It's not fair, equitable, just for them to ask for the repayment of this debt. You have to do it within 180 days from the date you get the notice. And again, if you submit your request for waiver within 30 days, the veteran will continue to receive full benefits while they're processing. And that's very important because these waiver requests can take months to be determined. And in the meantime, if you're a veteran, your benefits are being deducted, it's going to have an impact on so many of your daily living expenses, budget, housing. And unfortunately, we have seen veterans lose their housing because of these deductions. The monthly payment plan, again, is just a statement that after you've exhausted perhaps your other options, you requested a waiver, and there's still some amount that the VA is saying that you owe, they will accept a reasonable monthly payment plan. There is, again, because there is always a form for the VA, it's called the financial status report. And that is basically a form that you'll list all of your financial income, assets, liabilities, et cetera. Then based on that, they will determine what amount is that you can reasonably afford. And we've seen these amounts be very small, so it is worth taking the time to do so. And again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I want to just stress again that if you submit the request for compromise or a compromise offer, even if you submit it after the request for waiver, the VA will consider the offer to compromise first. So typically we advise to do the waiver request, wait for the decision. Then if you're going to make a compromise offer, you could do so. Another valuable benefit that can help veterans and their families, households address their unmet legal needs is VA survivor's pension. This is a monthly payment to qualified surviving spouses and unmarried dependent children of wartime veterans, and you have to meet certain income and asset limits that are set by Congress. And these are available publicly and online. And if anyone ever has a question, they can contact our office and we can provide those limits that the VA uses. A question we often get: are family members allowed to receive VA benefits through an eligible veteran? And the answer is, it depends, but sometimes yes. Similar to Social Security benefits for dependent children or surviving spouses or widows, the VA recognizes that a spouse or dependent child of a veteran or service member may qualify for certain benefits. And that's something that is often not realized, that in order, not just the survivor benefit itself, but there are other benefits like healthcare, life insurance, favorable terms through VA home loans, money to pay for education, for school training. There are very specific requirements that have to be met by either the surviving spouse or the children. And that is something that we often go over with veterans. And then if it looks like they meet that criteria, we assist with making sure that they know how to apply for these types of benefits. There's some other added benefits that veterans and their families are sometimes not aware of, such as help with burial costs. And there are also benefits that help with veterans who need care in their homes, and they need what's called aid and attendance benefits. And in some cases, they'll even pay family members to take care of a veteran who has certain medical needs in the home. Dependency and indemnity compensation, it's not something we commonly encounter, but this is for when the death of the veteran, the former service member, when their death was either related to their service-related injury or illness, there is a benefit that they can receive surviving spouses, children, and sometimes even parents. And just very briefly, that you have to show that the service member died from an injury or illness while on active duty or in the line of duty, or from a certain injury or illness incurred during duty or enacted or training. VA disability, I would say, is one of the most common veteran legal issues that we assist veterans and advise them about. And VA disability is not the same as Social Security disability. VA disability is based on injuries or illnesses incurred during service, and the veteran has to show that the illnesses or injuries that they have currently were related to their injury or illness during the service or aggravated by, but that's a whole different training and session. This is also a monthly tax-free payment to any veteran who gets injured, as I said, or ill during their service. Some of the benefits or some of the conditions that can qualify are physical conditions or mental health conditions. And that can include PTSD, that can include any physical injury that could have incurred while the veteran was in service. These are very fact intensive, meaning that it requires reviewing the treatment records, military records. That's something we also assist veterans with, is sometimes obtaining their records so they can make these claims. And once they can do that, it helps them to support and provide evidence for why this injury is that they're currently being treated for is related to their service. And again, just a little bit more explanation, back pain, breathing problems, hearing loss, for veterans who served in places where there were loud noise exposure, such as I worked with a veteran who served on an aircraft carrier where ships were, taking off and landing, and one who was exposed to loud rifle fire of certain decibels that cause hearing loss. And when you can show that their duties and how expose them to certain conditions, that also can help make the case that their injury or illness is related to their service. And then also, again, some of the more internal states, mental health, traumatic brain injury, PTSD is something that's now widely recognized by the VA. Depression, anxiety that sometimes was apparent or aggravated by their service can also be a qualifying as well. The VA pension, which is also referred to as VA, it's referred to as non-service connected disability. And this provides monthly payments to veterans, and they have to meet certain age, disability requirements, income, and net worth. It's not exactly apples to apples, but it's somewhat similar to SSI, which is for Social Security disability for people who have very low income. And the wartime requirement is not difficult to meet because the wartime periods goes back to World War I. And unfortunately, we've had been at war in some capacity for decades. And so that can include Gulf War, Vietnam War, Korean War, World War I, and World War II. The HUD VA and VA housing programs are, in my mind, some of the most valuable services that the VA provides. And this, along with the VA social workers, my colleague Pi Young and I, we work very closely with many of the HUD VASH caseworkers who assist veterans. HUD VASH is it's a collaborative program between HUD, which is the housing department for the United States, and the VA, and it combines HUD vouchers, which are called the housing vouchers, referred to as Section 8 vouchers. And then they also incorporate supportive services, which includes intensive case management, wraparound services, and other services as needed to help support either homeless veterans, formerly homeless veterans, at risk veterans and their families to not just obtain the housing, but to sustain it, meaning to be able to manage it long term. And so this program also, as I said, includes families in their households, and the type of housing they're eligible for is dependent on the size of their household, whether they need a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, et cetera. Veterans who are appropriate for their program, they do have to be eligible for VA healthcare. The VA will make this determination, and they have to meet the definition of homelessness under federal law. And because of the need, and because unfortunately the scarcity of these housing vouchers, they do prioritize the homeless veterans and the ones who are chronically homeless and give them priority. But again, it's a valuable program, and it allows these HUD VA caseworkers we worked with are phenomenal, and they work with not just the housing authority, they work with the landlords, their property managers, different persons to help maintain the housing when there are communication issues, when there's issues with the lease or repairs, which is something that we commonly see, to help before things escalate to an eviction or to a termination of a lease or non-renewal of a lease. So it's very valuable, as I said. Just very briefly, there are other VA housing programs that veterans and their families may not be aware of. These include grant per diem programs, enhanced use lease programs, where private entities will lease a space, but they agree to provide direct services to veterans in the community, such as job training, and just those fundamental services that people need: haircuts, computer access, laundry facilities. Supportive Services for Veteran Families is a program that also works closely with HUD VA and that we interact with as well. They provide financial assistance and other types of assistance for families. And examples might be to help with a security deposit, first month's rent, to help with repair issues, to help with automobile repair issues, so the veteran can maintain their transportation for work or for medical appointments. And then the VA Home Loans is a very important program that helps veterans and their families to access home ownership. And through the VA home loan process, they can get favorable terms, including in some cases, no down payments, lower interest rates, depending on, a number of circumstances. And then also to repair, to adapt the home, to make it accessible for disability needs, things like that the VA also provides. And during the COVID-19 pandemic, these types of home loans were very valuable because there were forbearance options offered to veterans who were impacted by COVID-19 that helped them to stay in their home or not to be foreclosed on. And so can't say enough about these programs. And finally, I just want to talk a little bit about the Pines VA MLP and just, I guess, to be honest, put some plugs in for it. As we said, and as was identified at the beginning of this presentation, some of the biggest unmet legal needs: child support, driver's license restoration, fines, VA benefits, housing issues. So much of that is tied to income. And so that's why these benefits that I reviewed are so important to veterans and their families, or to supplement their income, their employment, or other benefits they're receiving, because they all interact with one another. If your job is not paying enough, obviously you're going to have a hard time paying your child support. But if you get VA pension or VA disability, that income can help you to pay the fines off so you can get your driver's license restated. It can help you pay your late fees for your rent or whatever things that could lead to catastrophic outcomes. During the COVID-19 pandemic, we transitioned to telephone, virtual, and in-person assistance on a case-by-case basis to ensure the continuity of services. We wanted to make sure that veterans knew we were here for them, that they could access us. Unfortunately, when we could not provide the in-person access, but we did make sure that there was help available and that they knew how to access it, and our community partners were aware of how to access our program. Again, the MLP services, whether it's at Bay Pines, whether it's at Haley VA, where we also have an MLP and attorneys that work in that program, whether it's through the statewide veteran legal helpline, which I'll provide that information shortly. These are critical to providing vulnerable veterans with assistance with family, consumer debt, housing issues that have an impact on their mental and physical health outcomes. And as I've been saying throughout this presentation, the Bay Pines VA MLP works closely with the VA social workers, HUD VA, related staff to coordinate medical and legal services for veterans. And just here, I'll just leave this up. This is information about how to contact us for assistance. The MLP appointment line is the number that a veteran or their family can call to be pre-screened for eligibility. And once they're found eligible, they will be assigned to one of the MLP attorneys who will contact them to do a full intake and consultation. I put up the contact information for myself and for my colleague, Pai Young, and also to make sure for anybody that is outside of our service area, which is Pinellas, Sarasota, Manatee primarily, there is a statewide veterans legal helpline that a veteran anywhere in the state of Florida can contact, and they will be directed to the closest partner, or MLP provider for further legal assistance. So, one thing the state has done well is getting resources out there for veterans to assist them with their unmet legal needs. So at this time, if there are any questions, if Pi could let me know.
I don't see any questions in the chat group, Jeff.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I want to thank everyone for their time and attention. Please feel free to contact us at any time if you have any follow-up questions to any of the information that was shared. And we wish you and your families the best. And we wish you a happy Veterans Day next week. Thank you very much.